Timon's shoulders ached. The arrows weighed a ton as he carried them up the steps of the walls of King's Landing. Quicker, boy! Timon was going as quick as his legs could carry him. He wasn't built for this. He wasn't supposed to be here. Do you want to be burnt to a fiery crisp? No, sir. Have your body turned to ash? No, sir. Then fetch me more arrows before that mad Targaryen kills us all. Yes, sir. The old soldier frightened Timon. He was the one who dragged him from his mother's grasp in Flea Bottom. We need all the men this city can offer. He's just a boy. The old soldier slapped his mother for that. He'll grow up soon enough. Timon was thrust into a weak, rusty armour that was too big for him and put to work, carrying scorpion arrows up to the top of the wall. They were heavy, awkward things, and Timon hated carrying them. He liked it at the top of the wall, though. There he could overlook Flea Bottom and was so close to the stunning Red Keep. He could almost spot his cobbled, grubby streets from where he stood. Sir, I'm no knight, boy. The name's Steelfoot to you. Would this take down a dragon? Nodding to the scorpion arrows Timon held in his hands. Aye, we haven't got much hope if they don't. She'll burn us all, lad, if we don't stop her. Just then, Lannister horns started to blow in the distance. Timon's blood froze. Soldiers on their break started to move into action. Steelfoot started to boss his men. With me, you fuckers! I'm not fucking burning today. The only thing that will burn me is that bloody sun, you hear me? Timon moved quickly, weaving through the chaos of soldiers moving and preparing for the war to come. When they finished their final preparations, silence fell along the walls as they waited for the northern armies, for the Mad Queen, and for her deadly fire-breathing monster to arrive. As Daenerys circled high above King's Landing on Drogon, grief ached in her chest. She tried to focus on the war to come, on King's Landing, but flashes of the long night fogged her memory, losing yet another child to the Night King. Seeing Rhaegal's throat ripped out by the Night King's reanimated Viserion. Daenerys' hands gripped tightly on Drogon's reins as anger filled her head. This was not supposed to be like this, she thought. Aegon conquered Westeros with 3 dragons. With Rhaegal lost, and Viserion an undead puppet for the Night King to torment her, all she now had was Drogon by her side. All is not lost, Dany thought. We take King's Landing and we regroup. Dany had dreamt since she was a little girl to walk up to the steps of the Red Keep and sit on the Iron Throne, her father's throne. She thought of all she had endured to reach here. The Red Waste, the war in Meereen, the people she had lost, her Carl, Barristan, Jorah, her bear. All of it couldn't have been for nothing. If I look back, I am lost. Dany didn't believe in this mama's farce of Jaime pleading with Cersei. She was a tyrant, and she would not break. Jaime had promised that he would be able to turn Cersei and get her to open the gates. But words are wind, and Cersei would only listen to fire and blood. And with that, Dany heard them. The horns of Winterfell. The signal to burn. The signal that Jaime had failed. Dany brought up Drogon's reins and pushed down and dove to the city. Wind blasted past her, and she began to hear drums and the cheering of the Dothraki and the northern armies. Dany's first aim of attack were the Scorpions and men along the city walls by the Gates of the Gods. Dany dipped, aiming for the walls, and flew above the Scorpions in a flash, taking them unawares. Men were trying to shift their Scorpions to aim above them, but they were too late. Dracarys! The top of the city walls were aflame in seconds. The men of King's Landing screamed. Soldiers began to run up the wall's edges, trying to escape the fire. Drogon followed the stretch of wall, burning the men as he flew. Next, Dany moved to the gates themselves. A mass of City Watch and Lannister men stood behind the Gate of the Gods, waiting for the Northmen to try and enter. Now began to watch their fellow men burn around them. Drogon landed on a building close to the gate. The men in the city walls backed away in fear, seeing the great beast tower above them. Dracarys! Hundreds of soldiers were lit up in flames. The screams of agony ringed out through the city. Drogon leaped onto a tattered building close to the gates as a quarrel skimmed past Dany's face. She turned to see a terrified soldier on a nearby wall holding a crossbow. Drogon bit down hard on him in a second. What was left of his hips and legs tumbled to the floor. Dany moved to the gate of the gods. Drogon began his blaze of fire. Molten flames blasted from Drogon's mouth as Dany clinged on. The heat was unbearable for the people around, but Dany was the blood of the dragon. Drogon blasted open the gate of the gods. Cheers from the Northmen outside were heard as they started to push away the rubble and wooden beams. Through the fire, Dany saw Jon Snow and his black horse at the forefront of his vanguard. Dany smiled at him. He smiled, nodding back to her. Dany stared at him as she pulled the reins and Drogon took off, flying above the city. Next was Euron and the Iron Fleet. The days leading up to the battle, Euron had set up a blockade with his Iron Fleet to prevent Dany's ships and some of her army from reaching King's Landing. Today, all that would change. Euron's fleet was formidable. His ship, the Silence, the largest vessel in the Iron Fleet, had a crew of mutes and a deck that was painted red to mask the blood of Euron's enemies that was spilled on it. Euron shouted at the top of his voice, "Today we kill a dragon!" His men cheered and clashed their weapons together. Euron stood at the top of his ship's deck, wearing his Valyrian steel armor that he brought back from the ruins of Valyria. The armor was as black as midnight and intricately carved with intertwining dragon motifs. A thunderous roar coming from King's Landing cut out Euron's men. They watched in horror as Drogon rose from the smoke and flames of King's Landing. Euron's men moved into action. Qyburn had manned Euron's ships with as many scorpions as they were able to build, but it wasn't enough. "Loose!" Euron screamed as Drogon dipped over the city's walls into Blackwater Bay. A storm of razor-sharp dragon killers hurled at Dany and Drogon. Drogon dived. They narrowly missed the sea of scorpion bolts as Drogon pulled up just before he hit the water. Euron and his armada quickly prepared to fire another round of arrows, but it was too late. Drogon hit the first line of the fleet, crashing his body into the masts of the ships. Then he rained fire down on Blackwater Bay. Pale gold shot through the air, bouncing off the dark blue water. Ships, sails and men all went up in flames. Drogon continued to burn, and the bay began to stink of burnt flesh. Euron's men on the Silence were close to reloading their scorpion when Euron saw the beast close in on them. Through the black smoke, Drogon hovered in the air. Euron's men had stopped in shock, looking at the enormous beast that was in front of them. Dany stared down. A cold stare. Euron stared back, with a smirking stare from his one eye. "Dracarys!" Drogon arched his wings back and breathed death. Euron didn't run. Instead, he placed his great helm on, pulled down the visor, dropping to his knee, and covered his eye slot with his arm. Silence became a pit of red-hot, yellowy molten fire. Euron's men screamed in agony as they burnt. But not Euron. Through the fire, Euron rose. The flames merely licked his Valyrian steel armor. Daenerys caught his gaze, confused, as Drogon arched away, burning more of Euron's fleet. As the flames settled, Euron moved, pushing any of his burning crew members who got in his way. He had one aim, not to reach the Scorpion, but to reach his horn, the horn that he had also retrieved from the ruins of Valyria, a black horn intertwined with red and gold, with one name and one bidding: Dragonbinder. As Dany began to circle back, Euron finally found it, under some burning wood and being clutched by a burnt crew member. He ripped it from the dead man, burnt flesh still clinging to it. He quickly brought the horn to his lips, just as he was about to blow. A shadow blocked out the sun. Drogon collapsed on his ship, the hull cracking under its weight. The last thing Euron saw was a fiery pit, surrounded by 1,000 white knives. Drogon's teeth sunk into Euron's neck, ripping his head from his body and launching it into Blackwater Bay. Euron's headless body stumbled before falling to the deck, as Drogon again took flight, not before stepping and crushing the Dragonbinder horn to pieces. Dany directed her attention back to King's Landing, as Euron's blood seeped into Silence's red, painted deck, just like his foes before him. Much later, after the surrendering of King's Landing and the murder of Cersei Lannister at the hand of her brother. Daenerys landed Drogon on the city walls, near the Red Keep, overlooking Flea Bottom and the city's people. Dany breathed deep, composing herself.
"I'm not here to destroy your city,"
Daenerys screamed at the top of her lungs. The common people had begun to sheepishly step out of their homes. A mass started gathering below Dany as she sat on Drogon.
"This was once my family's city. This is my true home."
She addressed the people, her people.
"What Cersei has claimed of me, that I am a tyrant, here to rule over you, those are lies. I am the breaker of chains, the mother of dragons, here again to claim my true ancestral seat to bring peace among the realm."
The crowd finally responded to that.
"And the Queen of Apologise, that mean to rape our women and to take our land."
Some of the crowd agreed, joining in with the commotion.
"My Khalasar has fought to protect the people of Westeros, of mankind. When the time comes, they will be given contributions for their efforts. Gifts to murderers and rapists."
The crowd began to scream further, with some plucking up the courage and launching piles of horse shit and stones towards Dany. Drogon's neck snapped, looking for the culprit. Dany pulled his rein. "Easy," she told him in High Valyrian.
"A threat comes from the north. We must fight it together if we have any chance of survival."
Dany continued to address the crowd. At the same time along the wall, some rubble shifted, and a young boy's arm pushed away broken wood. Timon had survived the fiery breaths of Drogon. Covered in black ash and cuts, Timon pushed himself slowly out of the rubble. Looking around, he began to see burnt, lifeless bodies, men he had aided just hours earlier. Casting his eyes further through the smoke and debris, he saw him, Steelfoot, his skin blistering red and his armor melted to him. Timon tried to wake him, but it was futile. Tears in his eyes, Timon helplessly looked around, moving to the higher part of the city wall. He scanned the city, and through the smoke, he saw her. 100 yards from Timon, perched on the city wall, was the fierce black dragon, Drogon, and on top he could see Dany shouting to the crowd beneath her. In fear and in rage, Timon began to move. Quickly he started to push rubble aside, moving bodies searching for something. Finally he found it, a single long scorpion shaft. He picked it up and ran. With all his strength, Timon was able to slowly push a large, heavy scorpion. It would normally take 2 grown men, but Timon was fueled by pain. He cried and winced as he pushed it with all his might. Finally, when the shot lined up, Timon carefully placed his large arrow in its place. Timon's heart was racing. What was he doing? He was no soldier, no hero. The city was lost. Then he looked around, all the pain and suffering that was around him, and then he thought of his mother, thought of what the tyrant dragon queen would do to the people of Flea Bottom. He leant down and steadied his aim.
"Cersei would not heed our warnings. We gave her every chance."
Dany screamed at the top of her lungs, still pleading with the crowd. Dany then spotted someone moving forward that made her pause. A little girl no older than 5. She had let go of her mother's hand and was walking towards Dany, her eyes sullen, seeing the dark lines of her skull. She was dirty, her hair unkempt, and in her right hand she clutched her swollen stomach. She hadn't eaten properly in weeks. She stared at Dany and slowly lifted her left hand, asking for food, pleading. Dany stopped screaming. She couldn't speak, couldn't let her eyes off the little girl. The little girl's hand reached higher, begging, whispering the word. "Food. Food. Please." Dany stared at her. The girl reached higher and higher with her hand. And then the bolt shot into Drogon's left eye, and King's Landing descended into hell. Everything happened in a blur. Drogon let out a terrifying roar that shook the city to its core. People started to run, but it was too late. Drogon had mistaken the arrow coming from the people of Flea Bottom, and with one horrifying motion, burnt the townsfolk to a crisp. Women, children, buildings all shot up in flames. Dany screamed to Drogon to stop, but it was no use. The beast writhed in pain from the bolt as it continued to breathe death on the city below. People watched in horror as women and children, burning alive, tried to flee through the hellish fiery streets. Timon's victory was also short-lived, as his joy of his aim was cut short as Drogon turned to him and breathed molten hot flames on top of him. Dany pulled with all her might, screaming to stop the beast, but nothing would come. Drogon turned back to Flea Bottom to continue to rain fire from above. As he did, there was a large boom. The city shook. A building erupted in a large green-black ball of flames. Drogon had set off one of Cersei's caches of wildfire in Flea Bottom. The explosion blast was fierce, destroying neighbouring buildings, shops, and burning people in a green, fiery 100-metre radius. The blast knocked Drogon back, forcing Dany backwards and out of her saddle. She lost her grip of Drogon's reins and tumbled towards the city below her. The floor met her with great force. Drogon flapped his wings and parted from the city, leaving Dany in the smoke, dust, and screams of Flea Bottom. Dany's vision was blurred when she opened her eyes. Her ears were ringing and her body in agony. In excruciating pain, she looked around. Black smoke and dust surrounding her, bodies littered everywhere, buildings either turned to rubble or just holding on. The stench of ash and burning flesh consumed her. Dany spotted something through the flames that made her heart ache. Her left arm was still out, reaching. It was the little girl. Her mother's arms were still wrapped around her, trying to shield her from the flames. Both bodies were burnt black. Tears swelled in Dany's eyes as she shifted on the floor. I am lost, Dany thought. As blurs of people covered in flames ran past her, she felt sick seeing the horror that was all around. Some people either stumbled through the chaos or were wailing in suffering. She had to get up. She had to keep going. Slowly, bit by bit, she moved her bruised body, trying to rest herself on her arms. Bits of stone pressed against her fingers as she felt a wincing pain in her ribcage. She stopped to gather herself. Feeling her leg trapped, she pulled it towards herself slowly. As she did, a shadow slowly loomed over her. And that is when the building collapsed on top of her.